Hey, welcome to The Feast Life, where we empower you, the modern homeschool mom, to create a life and homeschool you love. I'm Julie Ross, the creator of the award-winning curriculum A Gentle Feast, a homeschool veteran of over 20 years, and a certified Christian life coach. Charlotte Mason said, life should be all living, not a mere tedious passing of time. So on this show, we seek to savor the feast of life. So go get your favorite beverage and pull up a chair. You're welcome at this table. Hello, welcome to today's episode of The Feast Life. Ever wonder if playtime could be the most important part of your homeschooling day? In today's episode, I'm joined by occupational therapist and fellow homeschool mom Sarah Collins, who reveals how the seemingly simple act of play builds essential life skills for our kids, and why it might just be the secret ingredient for a balanced, thriving homeschool. Whether it's risky play, unstructured activities, or even a playful mindset for moms, Sarah's insights will transform how you view learning at home. Let's dive into today's episode and get ready to see play in a whole new light. Hey everyone, welcome to The Feast Life. I'm your host, Julie Ross, and I'm here today with Sarah Collins, an occupational therapist, and we're going to be talking about something really fun today. We're going to be talking about play. I'm so excited. Thank you, Sarah, for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay, so before we get started, can you give everyone a little bit of kind of some background and where you're coming from before we jump in the conversation?
Yeah, for sure. So again, my name is Sarah Collins. I'm an occupational therapist, fellow homeschool mom. Before I was an OT, I was actually a recreation therapist, if you even knew that was a thing. So I worked
That's very
at
fun.
Children's Hospital. Yeah, now looking back on it, I'm like, why did I stop doing that? But I worked at Children's Hospital in Richmond, Virginia, and it was for kiddos who lived in the hospital. And so I ran their whole community integration program, which involved getting out on trips, but also was the daily coming down to play. It was the room that they could come and enjoy their time. So that was the early beginnings. And then as time went on, I was a ripe old age of 25, and I was like, I don't know where else I can take this career. And so went back to occupational therapy school at that point, got my master's in occupational therapy. And a huge piece of OT is play. It is let me back up a minute. Occupation is not your job, right? It is how you occupy your time. And all throughout our lifespan, we need to play. Now that looks different for sure from beginning of life to end of life, but it's still an important piece of our day-to-day, everyday activities. So play was another, I got to put the two together. My first job as recreation therapist, and then put together with occupational therapy, worked in a couple of other different hospitals, and then did home health care for a while, which at that point was working with the elderly. And how then do we carry on this play throughout your whole life? Then after my kids were a little bit older and I stayed home, I had the wonderful privilege of being able to stay home with them, which my daughter was in fourth grade. She went to public school at the beginning, and then we moved and were able to have me stay home rather than working outside of the home every day. And so at that point, that was 8 years ago, started homeschooling. And so my daughter was in fourth grade. One son was in kindergarten, and then my youngest was 1. And they are now 16, 13, and 9. So here we are.
Flies so fast, doesn't it?
Oh, so fast. So fast.
So how have you been able then to bring this occupational training into what you're doing with your kids and then what you do for other people as well?
Yeah. So with my own kids, so my middle son is neurodivergent, and it's really interesting because I found myself on a day-to-day basis looking at what he could do, what he needed and wanted to do throughout his day. And this is different for everybody. Again, this is how you occupy your time. And I would break down and say, why is there a struggle in this? Why is this hard for him? And what can I do to make whatever that occupation was easier? And a big piece for him was learning to read. And now looking back on it as more of a homeschool veteran, I would not be quite as worried as I was. He was 7 and like not reading, and then 8, and I was like racking my brain. And what it turned out to be, there's a whole long story of his whole life being born premature and then working through some other things. But it turned out that he was a kiddo who because he was premature, his eyes were not fully developed. So he was not visually tracking. And
Yeah.
I noticed this quite frequently across the board with activities. Like we would throw a frisbee and he wouldn't even see it coming, or we would be trying to read and he would lose his spot all the time. And finally, he ended up saying to me, Mom, how are you supposed to read when the words are moving on the page? I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, buddy, they're not. But what was happening was he's looking through one eye and then that eye would get tired. And then, so then it would look through the other. So if you're blinking at me,
Yeah.
it looks like everything is moving. We ended up, another big piece of being an OT is knowing when do I need to build my own team, right? Like I'm an expert in my child, but when do I need to seek out other expertise? And there's a lot that OTs know about vision, but I'm not a vision therapist for sure. And so we went and he had vision therapy for quite some time. He really learned how to use his sense of vision because before that, he was using his body to know where he was all the time. And that manifested itself into sensory seeking frequently. He's running and crashing and jumping, and now he's a hockey player. He still needs that. And
Yeah.
but we wanted to
But
turn
now he
it
can see the
into a
puck.
way.
So that's
Yes,
good.
right.
Yeah.
And that is another huge piece of it is he needed the motivation for him sitting to read. Not his jam, still isn't, and that's okay. He does, though you will find him hitting hockey pucks with his big headphones on, and you'll be like, what you listen to out there? Elijah of Buxton. Like he's pulling these books that he's listening to and not
He has to be
as
moving.
he's going on with his day.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that's so encouraging because I feel like, especially as homeschool moms, and when it comes to reading or it comes to like our kids being neurodivergent, we can panic, but you're someone who's coming
yeah,
from this background in this, and just to be like, it's normal. It doesn't matter what your
yeah.
background is. Like we all still, there are kids and it's different.
Mhm.
Each kid is different,
Yep.
new experience, and you may or may not have had experience in whatever you were in with XYZ. And so it's
Yeah.
always this kind of new thing and what could work for this kid and being willing
Mhm.
to be flexible and adapt to what they need. So I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Um,
And each kid is different. Each environment is different. What they need and want to do is different. So we have to pair all those things together. And so that it's never going to be the same thing twice. There's not a specific formula that's going to work.
yeah, so let's dive into occupying our time. And I love that
Mhm.
terminology around occupational therapists because I've never heard that before. So, okay, so how we're occupying our time. And I think a lot of parents feel like the academic stuff is how we should be occupying our time during school. And then if we have time left over, then they can play. But that's not what's really important. And so, what are your thoughts on defining and navigating the importance of play in a child's life?
Right. Let's define play in itself, right? So play is anything, it's activity where you're intrinsically motivated, you're internally controlled, and it's freely chosen, right? And it also includes that freedom to suspend reality or to be able to pretend play, what you're hearing there. So if we think about throughout our lifetime, when you are getting ready to go to work, or you're maybe not work, because a lot of times work we have to do, right?
Right, right,
But
right.
most of the time, but whatever, anything that you are interested in doing, you're going to be intrinsically motivated. You're going to be internally controlled. So these are things that we're practicing as little teeny ones and then going and going throughout the lifespan. So yes, academics is important, but we also need to think about what skills are we learning and how are these other things preparing us more for life as time goes on. And play is one of those that's really important. So some of the benefits from that, right? So not only just the motivation and building on that, but think about the confidence that you get when you are internally motivated to do something and then you're successful. So whether that's building your block tower or whether that's climbing a tree or whether that's setting up a whole school in your basement and leading whatever, leading Bobby to learn math. Yeah, same. They're all the same thing. You're building up that confidence. And when something doesn't work, then you're critically thinking, why? Like, why did that tower fall down? Do I care? Do I want to rebuild it? Or was the boom really fun? You have that freedom of choice throughout. I think play gives us the opportunity to practice the skills without somebody else telling us to do.
That's huge. So, other than the critical thinking and the problem solving, are there other skills that our kids naturally get from play?
Yeah. So again, as an OT, we break things down into motor skills, social skills, and cognitive skills. So motor skills wise, the sky's the limit with that when you're playing or you're climbing or you're building or whatever. We're talking about the strength in itself, the core strength and your upper body strength, your fine motor skills, all of those things naturally translate into handwriting. So
Yeah.
play is handwriting without writing. then
Yeah.
that's just one example, but other motor skills like balance that you need to learn when we have to have that core strength to, yes, to handwrite, but that core strength also matters whether you are able to stand on one foot or not, and whether you're able to engage in sports that you want to be able to play. And then later on as an adult, if you don't have that core strength and balance, you're way more likely to fall. So these skills that you're building as a teeny tiny one impact your quality of life as an older adult. And
Mm.
again, that's just the motor skills.
Yeah. You also mentioned social skills. So what kind of
Mm-hmm.
skills are kids getting when they're playing?
So whether or not you're playing by yourself or with whether you're playing in a group, it's actually interesting.
Mm.
I lead gym at our co-op, and today we were literally, I'm breaking it down. We did the whole body systems at the beginning of the school year to do their motor skills. And then we were talking today, we started talking about social skills and team building. And these guys are the ones who brought it up. I was like, guys, we're meant to be in relationship. We are not meant as humans to be completely alone. What are some things that you have to do? And some of the kids were like, we have to work together. I was like, oh, imagine that, because I have a bunch of team building games today. So I know, woo. So played a bunch, and as time was going on and conflict was coming up, and I was just standing back and letting them throw out ideas and then be able to interact with each other and go through, why isn't this working? And is there something that we need to change as a group? Or were you like not holding up your end of the bargain? And that's okay too. But they were able to discuss that together through play. I think so often we as parents, we see our kids get in squabbles and things, we want to jump in and be like, oh no, yeah. But
Thanksgiving dinners will be ruined forever. So we can't
yes,
resolve this right now.
never.
Yeah.
Right? But when they're playing and they work through that, sure, there are times that I come up and mom, she did this or that didn't work and whatever. But there are times when they work through things on their own and the results that or the plans that they come up with are so much better and different than I would give. It gives them practice to forgive and practice to admit when they're wrong and practice to apologize and
Yeah.
sometimes practice to be like, I need to walk away. Like this isn't good.
Yeah, and I
That's all
think part
okay
of it
too.
too is that play and learning these skills, right? It can be messy. It's not you
Mhm.
did this one thing and then here's the exact right result that we're going to get, which we often feel
Right.
like learning is, but learning is a lot of trial and error. And that didn't,
Yeah.
when I told my friend that reaction is not what I want, so I'm not going to do that
Yeah.
again. And or when I built this thing, it fell over. But they don't necessarily get that in a academic kind of setting. The only way to
Right.
learn this trial and error and processing is through play, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yep. There are, sure, sometimes we can have very specific. I was mentioning in gym that I gave them team building activities. Okay, you could look at that and be like, this was an academic setting or a group project. My
Right.
daughter now being in high school, she's going, well, she's homeschooled the majority of the day, but she goes to the tech school in the morning for it's called Health Career Pathways. And they just had to do their first, group project together. Great. That is team building too. But if she hasn't practiced that and that conflict resolution and all of that as a little one through her play, then you're going to have a way harder time if this is your first experience.
Right.
So let them do it through play.
Yeah, the consequences are much less when
Yeah. Yeah.
they're kind of first
When
step,
Johnny went home today and he's going to come back tomorrow, that's much less than I didn't do well on my test, right? Or my project did not go well.
or a job in real life,
Yeah.
right? You have to
Right.
get along
Yeah.
with people. So it's a really important skill. I also feel like it would be beneficial in terms of working on your own emotions.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
you're learning social skills, but also within yourself. So how does
Yeah.
like managing your own emotions come up and play?
So number one, being able to identify them, right? And so you're noticing what makes me feel good, what makes me feel excited, what makes me feel depressed, when you're playing, there are interoception, which is one of our senses. So
Wait, say it slow.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me back up a little bit. We all know of our senses, your visual sense, your hearing sense, your sense of smell, your sense of
Yeah.
taste, like the five main ones, right? But in OTs, especially when we're working in the field of sensory processing, we're also considering a sense called interoception. And that is understanding what's going on inside of your body. That's being able to tell the difference between I'm hungry or I feel nauseous. Those are both in the same area, but they're very different. Or I am anxious or excited, right?
Yeah.
Those things are similar, but different, right?
I actually tell my
So,
kids that all the time because, like, when they're going somewhere and they're like, I'm nervous. I'm like, remember, your body doesn't know the difference between nervous and excited. Instead of thinking about all the things you're
yes.
nervous about, maybe think about the things you're excited about. And they're like,
I
Mom.
love that. I know.
I'm sure your kids get that too with you.
Yes. Oh, they get so many of it. I have one son, he talks all the time with my mom's an OT. I know weird things.
Yeah.
He one day was like, my amygdala is so it's talking about the part of his brain that does help to regulate emotion. My amygdala is really affected by screens. I'm like, hmm. And I think you're having an OT for a mom is really going to affect your ability to have friends after this conversation. I know. Yes.
Inner perception, interoception.
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 Yes,
Okay.
interoception. So this is understanding, like I said, what's going on inside of your body. Now, if you think about in a day that you're just like, let's say it's a rainy day outside and you're just sitting down on the couch and you're like, blah, I don't feel like doing anything, right? So you're on the couch for a long time and then you get up and you're like, wow, I'm really hungry. When's the last time I ate? Or when's the last time I went to the bathroom or something? You're just like, because you were so vegged out, you were not paying attention to what's going on inside of your body. It took you the chance to move to remember, oh, there's other things going on. That's the sense of proprioception or knowing where your body is in space. That's the other one, or in relationship to itself. That's another sense. They're very closely linked. If we want our kids to understand themselves, what's going on inside of their bodies, they need to be able to move. They have to get up and go. So that's another benefit of play. And especially, I hate to, you guys might get mad, but the rough and tumble play of we're pounding on each other, we're rolling around, we're jumping off of things. And how often now we as parents are like, no, stop, stop, stop.
Yes.
But in reality, that gives you so much insight into where you are as a person and who you are as a person.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought this up. So let's sit here for a second, okay? Because I think this is so important. And I had one daughter who loved to climb trees. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember we were at the playground. I was with I have a whole bunch of children and with all the little ones, and I hear this scream, and it's a mom, and she's pointing up at this tree, and she's, there's a girl at the top of that tree. She had to be like almost 30 feet up in the air. It was a huge tree. She's at the very top. And of course, everything in me went, and then look
Like,
at all the other parents who are like, whose kid is up on top of that tree?
oh, I've been there.
Yes. And I'm like,
I know. I don't know that. Someone should tell her mother.
but it's just she's
Yep.
been doing that her whole life. Like it didn't even register with me that that would be something to panic about because she had been doing it her whole life. So let's narrow in on this concept. I think you called it risky play earlier before we
Yes.
hopped on the call. So what is risky play and how as parents can we navigate that?
Okay. So risky play. Let's dive in because there is a lot to be said that there. And again, if we define that, so I like to use, there was an article that was posted or published back in 2011. Her name, the author was I always say it wrong, Sandister. And so she defined risky play as six different types. So one would be handling tools, right? So handling your hammer, but then also the to build your treehouse, but then also maybe the s'more stick that you're gonna go, or the sticks that are outside that you're gonna play
Or kitchen knife, even.
whatever. Yeah, we're gonna beat each other with
Yeah.
them. Please don't do that.
No, no,
But
no,
you
I meant
could
like
play.
letting your child cut vegetables. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
Not with
okay, that
knives.
too. Yes, all of those things.
Don't run with the
Being
knives, kids.
Yes, we can draw the line somewhere, but we do want to practice with something so that then we do know when is it too risky for you. Being near dangerous elements, like being outside and playing tag, and my mom is doing the watering the garden, and so we've got water nearby or a bucket of water, or we've got a bonfire in the backyard. Speaking of s'mores that we were mentioning before, being near all of those things or playing near a pool, all of those that could be dangerous, but we need to exploring heights. So you mentioned climbing trees or walking on trails, or my youngest son used to love like parking garages, not climbing up obviously on like higher floors, but right to be able to look outside of where the parking garage is. He always wanted to like lean really close. And I'm like, that's terrifying to me. Don't fall down. But he loved to know where he was. And so that was always something that was risky, but necessary for him. Speed, like skiing, riding a dirt bike, whatever, any of those types of things, rough and tumble play that we mentioned. And also playing on one's own without adult supervision. Like, how many times are we like, you can't go out there because I'm not there to supervise? Okay, but what is
Everything you're
that
mentioning just
freedom?
sounds like my childhood.
Yes, most likely because
Right.
we were allowed more risky play now. And who knows, there's a whole lot of theory out there as to why this is happening, but we tend to not allow as much risky play for our own children. And what is that affecting, right? Number one, they don't know themselves quite as well. They don't know what is safe and what is a risk. So when you're talking about, yeah, your daughter was climbing up in a tree because she's been climbing up in a tree for forever. You've been around. She knows her body. She knows where to put her feet. She knows her sense of balance. She's probably tried a couple times on something lower and it didn't work well and she had to problem solve and figure it out. If all of a sudden now somebody who's never climbed a tree and they're, yeah, I see in your eyes, right? And
Like,
now they're trying to follow her up the tree.
yeah.
That's dangerous play. That's not risky play. That's dangerous. But to know what's dangerous, you have to have the ability to practice risk.
Mm. So then who defines the dangerous?
It depends on the kid, right? It really is. That's one of the benefits of us homeschooling and being around our kids all the time. And their motor skills abilities, your child best, their problem solving, their social skills of can they ask for help if they need it? Can they problem solve and say, hey, I need this, or advocate for themselves? That stuff. So you're able to better say whether it's risky or dangerous. I've one son that I mentioned him. So my middle son, Caleb, who he is a sensory seeker. He's also been climbing trees from the time that he was teeny tiny. In fact, we used to in the summers, like his legs would be so cut up. We were like, oh, they're just his summer legs because he's climbing trees and jumping out. I watched one day, we have chickens. And so we have a gate on our deck to keep the chickens off because no one wants to sit next to chicken poop, right? So to keep them off. But
That's not
instead
the
of
kind of risk
opening,
we're taking.
no,
Right.
to open the gate to walk down, that's what the majority of people would do. No, instead, Caleb made himself a ramp to get up over top of the gate and then jumped there and landed and did a somersault off. So for my other children, I'd be like, let's not do that. Like,
Yeah,
could you just
right.
open the gate and walk down? But for Caleb, like he needs that to challenge himself, to challenge his brain of how can I come up with however it is that I want to get over the top. And then to for him to dive and then do a somersault, like that's in his day-to-day life. He's fine. He knows his body enough that he's not going to hurt himself. So I have to make different allowances for him than for my other kids. And it's okay for me to say that. That I think is one of the things that we as parents are afraid to do, where we're like, oh no, nobody can do that. That's not safe. Instead, be like, it's okay. Caleb can do that. You're not quite ready. Or Caleb's body needs that. Yours doesn't quite as much. And we can recognize our differences and be okay with that.
So how do we know if our child is ready for some of these more like riskier things? Like are there things we're looking for, or just it's more of an experience, trial and error, kind of know your kid?
I think it's more experience and know your kid and know the environment. Like if it's a brand new environment and your kid has never tried something like that before, it's a new tool, it's a new, obviously we're going to need more supervision. And no, I'm not saying that we should give them sticks and have them go down the ski slope at the same time towards the fire at the bottom. We don't need to add in all of the risk at
Yeah.
one time. We might want to manage those, but with your children, I think it's important to trust ourselves. And this is another way that academics kind of ties in and pulls together is when your child is good at self-awareness and self-analysis. If they can tell you, oh, I got that math problem wrong and why, or I'm having a hard time writing that sentence or why, they're able to think about their thinking, that they're probably going to be more self-aware and able to advocate for themselves there. I think it's, go
Weird.
ahead.
Like, how do you, it's a fine line, I would think, between I'm scared to maybe try new things or riskier things versus
Mhm.
maybe sometimes they need a little push down the hill. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think when you set up an environment of, wow, I'm going to model this too. When we as parents we talked about play being lifelong. If we're more playful or we're more willing to try things, when's the last time that you went across monkey bars at the playground or you were not afraid to try something new or even you were I don't know, you were having a dance party at night and I don't know, moved around more. If we're modeling this own playfulness for our children, then they're more willing to take some risks as well. And it's good for us again, as much as I was talking about the strength and fall risk as time went on. If you're dancing and you're moving and you're going down, you're crawling or you're climbing, like these are things that prevent falls later on in life.
Yeah, that's something I've really had to learn in like the past couple of years of I want to model that for my kids. And I used to
Mhm.
be like, oh, I don't think I can do that, or I'm scared. And to really push myself in those moments to go, what model kind of model are you setting?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm going to show them that at least I'm going to try. So for
Yeah.
them to learn how to ski,
Mhm.
it was much easier for them to learn how to ski than it was for me at 47 and to learn how to
Yeah.
ski. And I tried it several times and kept falling and had a whole issue. And I was like, you know what, guys? And they took off like that. I've been doing this my whole life. I'm like, oh, I'm going down the hill. It's like so slow. And after a couple days, I was like, you know what? I tried it. I wanted to model for you that like I was
Yeah.
going, and I've learned I do not actually like skiing, and it is
Yeah.
not in the house, but I'm so stoked that you all think it's fantastic. And I will
Yeah.
take things and do the things because but I wanted to at least try. So you could see me trying as much as you. And then the other thing is at like amusement parks, I used to get so, oh, I don't want to go on that ride, or I don't want to do
Yeah.
that. And of course, like kids are like, let's go on this, let's go on this. Like, wow. And for years I didn't. And I'm, oh, I'll hold everybody's stuff or whatever. And I've just started saying yes more.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll do it. Yes. And same thing, like I would tell myself, nervous and excited. Your body doesn't know the difference. So I kept like
Yeah.
being in
Yeah.
line going, I'm so excited to ride this roller coaster. I'm so excited. But I actually really enjoyed it. And I just
Yeah.
want to do
See?
it again.
Mhm.
Like, this
Took a
is
little bit of risk.
awesome.
And there is okay, like one of the things that you just mentioned, you tried it and you were like, yeah, that's not my jam. That's a great thing to model too. We don't have to try every single thing and then become like, this is my thing. I'm going to be a skier now. I mean, you can be like, I tried it and I didn't like it, or I
Mhm.
didn't feel safe. And that's something to respect too. If you try something and you do not feel good about it, great. You know what? There's two options here. You can say, cool, you don't have to do it again, or why? Let's get curious about that a little bit. Did you not want to go on that roller coaster because it made you feel sick and dizzy? All right. Okay, don't do it. Or is there something vestibular wise that maybe we need to work on there too of why? When I was mentioning my son with reading and how I noticed it also when we were throwing a frisbee and he didn't even see it, that required the me being curious throughout the day of looking at what he's doing day to day wise all throughout his day, not just during that academics, but where else does this show up? What in the ways that you're occupying your time? So if you're seeing things in play, like you're really fearful to go, is that because you're afraid to climb up the tree? You're like, you don't have the strength, you don't have the task initiation, which is executive functioning, or is it that the height is bothersome? There are lots of different reasons why. So getting curious about those and then trying to see whether that's a trend. If it's not a trend and you just don't want to climb a tree, cool, don't climb the tree. But there's always things that we can look at, and that's how we know our kids so well.
So like a pattern might be like they're afraid to climb this tree, but then they're also afraid to try something new for school and that they'll fail.
Mhm.
Like that, you can see
Mhm.
that kind of pattern. Is that
Mhm.
what you're referring to?
Yep. Yep. And that would be like a task initiation thing. So we're afraid to start anything, or we have a hard time unless I'm like, hey, sit down and do this exact thing. That would be the executive functioning. If we're thinking like depth perception wise or strength wise, if you're afraid to climb this tree and you also have really messy handwriting and you're also like, you don't want to crawl or you don't want to lift things over your head, then okay, so we might want to be thinking, all right, what's going on here with strength? So it's hard to say. And this is one of the things I do as homeschool OT is I look at how do things, I work with parents and support them on how do we observe this and what does that mean observing across different activities. I have on my website, there's something called the reverse planning guide, and it talks through these things like the motor skills, the social skills, and the cognitive skills that you're doing in day-to-day activities. And I'll make sure that I send you a copy and a coupon code for that so people can get it. But it allows you to process through and helps to guide your questioning so that you are curious and can tease out some of those things.
Are you ready to finally set goals that stick and transform your homeschool along the way? I get it. Each year you start with big dreams and resolutions determined to make this year the best yet for you and your homeschool. But as the days blur together and life happens, these dreams get pushed to the back burner. The sparkle of the new year fades, and once again you're left feeling stuck, overwhelmed, and disappointed. Sound familiar? Well, you're not alone in the struggle. So many homeschool moms feel the same. We get caught up in the day-to-day, and, well, our own goals and desires can feel like luxuries we just don't have time for. And the biggest reason, we often set goals without digging deep into what truly matters to us and what fits our values as homeschool moms. Without this grounding, our plans lose momentum, leaving us feeling frustrated and defeated. But what if this year things could be different? What if you could step off the cycle of unmet goals and frustration? Imagine being able to set goals that honor your personal growth and your family's needs, giving you clarity and renewed sense of purpose. Welcome to my goal setting retreat for homeschool moms. Designed around a powerful 3-day retreat, this course will guide you through a process of reflection, vision casting, and purpose-driven goal setting tailored specifically for homeschool moms. This isn't about quick fixes or just another to-do list. It's about creating a fulfilling path for growth that aligns with your deepest core values. In this course, you'll discover day 1 is reflect and realign. We're going to take a look back with fresh eyes, celebrate what went well, and uncover lessons from the toughest moments. This reflective process will bring you clarity and help you create goals that genuinely resonate with you. Then we're going to craft a vision for the year that considers both your personal aspirations and the needs of your homeschool. Then we're going to resolve. We're going to move from intention to action with step-by-step guidance, practical tools, and weekly planning tips that will help you keep on track. So, if you're ready to break free from what you've always done and stepped into a life in homeschool you truly love, make sure you sign up for my goal setting retreat today. Go to thefeastlife.me/goals. Again, that's thefeastlife.me/goals, and I hope to see you inside the goal setting retreat. Yeah, you mentioned executive functioning. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. So executive functioning is how you execute any task, right? So it's not, wow, this executive of the big corporation of your occupation, right? We as OTs, we have all this language that make you think that we're training CEOs all the time. But in reality, I'm working with mom next door, So anything that you need to do to start, to complete, or persist through, and then to complete a task. So when you think about, I need to get dressed in the morning. First, I have to find my clothing. I need to know what season it is. So that has to do with time management. So I also need to think about how long this is going to take. And that's before then I'm actually putting it on and then knowing when I'm done, and imagine that cleaning up after. So yeah, so it includes the task initiation. It includes your working memory of what do you need to get right in that exact second. Things that you're going to remember only for a minute, but not even a minute, just while you're completing that task. It includes the persistence. It includes your attention as you're going. It includes that flexible thinking. This shirt doesn't fit or it's dirty. Can I pick a different one? It includes persistence, which I've mentioned, and then the self-evaluation of how did I do with that. And that's getting dressed is just an example. You're doing that all day long, every day throughout all of your tasks.
Will that also apply to play?
Yeah. Yeah. Because you need, when you're playing for sure, and you're practicing a lot of those executive functioning skills.
Yeah.
You're practicing, obviously, getting started, but organizing and finding all the materials. If you want to build a tower, you have to know where your blocks are. And then you're going to build it up and you're going to persist until it falls down. Then you have to be able to say, what happened? Do I want to build it again? Do I need to change the way this block is going? Do I need to, that's your flexible thinking. You need to be able to control your emotions. So emotional control is another executive functioning skill, all in the frontal lobe. So the frustration tolerance of that as it's going, and then the evaluation of how did it go? What do I want to change in the future?
But all those things you just mentioned would totally translate to school.
Yes.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
like, do I want to start this thing that I don't really actually want to do right now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to make
And
myself.
if you have, yeah, we mentioned the group project that my daughter was on earlier too. And that's definitely time management, prioritization. What do I need to do first and second and third? Do I need to, whatever, get my poster board? I forget what her project was. I think she was doing research on a health career, and then they had to do a presentation for the class on it. And how do we divide up? How do I handle my emotion throughout? If so and so is absent today, what are we going to do? So now she didn't bring in her piece right now. So how can I adjust with that? Persisting through when maybe you didn't have the equipment that you needed right away, whatever. These are, I'm coming up with this off the top of my head, but they're
Yeah,
all,
yeah,
yes, day to day, all the time. The planning, the prioritization, the
yeah.
organization, time management, it's all executive functioning. And that's all in the frontal lobe of your brain.
Now, are there specific like things? Is it just like general play, or would there be like specific kinds of play that would help with that? I could definitely see like the building the tower, but even like imagination, imaginary play, I would think would fall under that too.
Functioning skills and the motor skills and the social skills. All types of play both require those skills and help to build them. So we call it in OT speak, we say occupation as a means and occupation as an end. So we're using play right now, yes, to build those skills, but the end product maybe that sure that you can build your tower or you can climb your tree or whatever, which could be play in itself, or it's you're building these skills so that you can use them across all the rest of your activities throughout the day, including academics.
But I think seeing that makes it easier to go, this isn't something extra. This isn't a waste.
Yeah, it's
This isn't
important.
a distraction from the real learning that they're doing over
Mm-hmm.
here, because that's the
Mm-hmm.
foundational learning that actually you have to have these executive functioning skills to do all your other school.
Yep. It is absolutely a way to say my child is learning all day, every day, and it gives us a little bit of grace and a little bit of freedom to say, you know what, I know maybe today we're not sitting down and copying whatever the Star Spangled Banner in cursive, but we are working on the motor skills and the cognitive skills and the social skills that are required by that same task.
Yeah, I think of like cursive writing, for example,
Yeah.
and maybe they're picking up little pebbles and they're throwing them in,
Yep.
but that's building all these muscles
Mm-hmm.
right here that are going to help with
Yep.
cursive. And yeah, that's so
Mm-hmm.
cool. What about, is there a difference then between structured and unstructured play and how that affects all of these kind of things we're talking about? Is one better than the other? It doesn't really matter.
Don't think it really matters. If we're thinking about imagination, I guess maybe define what do you mean by structured play?
Or, okay, like an activity. We're going to go to swim classes or soccer, like that, versus I'm in my backyard and you're the teacher and I'm the student, and or I'm the mom and you're the dad and this is our baby and this is how I
Yeah,
like.
that is not necessarily play in itself, which is
Yeah,
actually is one of the things that has, I think, made it so hard for us to just allow our kids to be. Because so often we're like, oh, we have soccer practice and that's their play.
yeah.
But in reality, so that's not intrinsically motivated. That's an adult telling you what to do. That's not internally controlled, which are some of the defining terms that we talked about at the beginning. That's somebody else, again, putting a demand on you and externally controlling it. It's not necessarily freely chosen because you have to be there at 7:15 p.m. So I think those things are, yes, are important. And I've mentioned my son's a hockey player, my daughter's a volleyball player. Those are important things. And you certainly build executive functioning skills through that. You certainly build motor skills and social skills, but it's not in the same way because it's not internally and freely chosen.
So why is that important? If I'm going to get the strength,
So
executive functioning, and these skills in this setting as well, why do I also need this other kind of play that's more unstructured and I'm choosing these things myself?
because it's intrinsically motivated. And how often in our lives do we need to learn to be motivated by ourselves, self motivation?
I don't know
And
what you're talking
so,
about. My kids do everything by themselves without me ever asking.
so probably because they were climbing trees.
I'm joking.
We're going to put it all together.
Yeah, right. There you go.
Climb trees, be a CEO.
There you go. Yeah, no, that's so important, right? Because
Mhm.
we don't really get that very many other places in our lives.
No, you don't. You really don't. Off the top of my head, I can't say that there's really any other besides crafting or things like that, but that usually has an end product besides just getting started to play that is completely intrinsically motivated as a kid, as a little one, where you're starting something completely on your own because it's your own idea and then you're seeing it through. It's only play.
Now, what do you think about like parents? Can they just watch? Can they go to something else? Should they join in? Like, how do the parents navigate their role in the play?
Yeah, I think it depends on so many different times. I love reading back in Charlotte Mason. She taught through some of her books. I can't quote which one it came from, but I vividly
Oh, you
remember
can't quote it off the
reading.
top of your head? Come on.
Yeah, right. Sarah, page 300 in
Yeah.
volume two, right? Which, by the way, they are very long.
Right.
So there probably is a page 300 of volume two. But when she talks about being outdoors and parents taking, I think says your handicrafts, parents taking your crafts outside and watching and not interrupting. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing and not quoting here. But I remember reading that and being like, I'm going to go sit outside on my blanket and I'm going to crochet or
Yes.
cross stitch and watch. That's going to be a great time, Charlotte.
Yeah. Woo! Wild play. Actually, it's so exciting
Yes.
for people. That's the time
But
and they're out there on the blanket and their kids are around. But yeah,
mhm,
I'm
mhm.
with you, girl.
But there are beautiful things that when I would try to engage, it's almost like I was interrupting their play scheme where I would be like, they're throwing rocks or something, and I go over, I'm like, let me see how far mine goes. And Reese, my youngest, would be like, that's not what I'm doing. He's like, I'm digging this out. So I've then distracted him. I've broken his attention, which we want kids to be building longer attention spans. And so if we're interrupting, then we're distracting from that. So are there times? Absolutely. And especially if your child is inviting you, then
Yes,
in a perfect world, then you would of course have time to go and do that.
of
But in
course.
reality, you're probably making dinner and folding laundry and coming up with next year's plans all at the same time.
Very talented.
Yes. So it's okay to say, I can't do that right now. You play. It's also okay to join in, or it's okay to watch and say, I don't want to interrupt. It depends on your kiddo and again, the environment and what they need and want to do at that time.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. I think sometimes we can feel guilty if they do invite us and we can't play right then. But then because of that guilt, sometimes we'll try to interrupt and insert
Yeah.
ourselves when we actually weren't invited.
Yes.
We go
Like
for
that was
it. Like,
my husband, when my kids were little, would tell them, like, Daddy doesn't play pretend because he did not like that at all. He would play a game with them. He would have something that's a stop and a start. He would play sports with them forever and still does. But like, he wasn't going to pick
like,
up the little firefighter and move it around in the firehouse. Not his thing. And especially my daughter was one of those that would be like, Mommy, you hold her and you say this.
yep,
She wanted me to
I will
do
tell you what to do. Yep.
yeah. And my husband be like, I don't want to say that.
Yeah, right. That's
But that also is going back to those social skills. That also is through that. This isn't necessarily something I want to do. It is what you want to do. You can play it by yourself, or we can come up with something together. That's okay.
yeah. But also that it's okay to know yourself and what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with. But speaking of this concept of play throughout your lifetime and can we talk, and we'll end here on this note, about the importance of moms playing? Charlotte Mason
Yeah.
does say, it would do the mom a world of good to go out and play.
Hmm.
So talking about modeling that, but then what are the benefits to mom playing?
Yeah.
Like, I
You
don't
know,
necessarily
so
need to build my fine motor to handwrite, but
no, you don't. But you do need to move your body. And if we're talking about, as we mentioned before, people are not meant to live not in relationship, right? And we know this because nervous systems react together. And a lot of times, what I'm working with families on is co regulation. So, this is a term of thinking if you walk into a room and there are two people arguing in front of you, you automatically, you're not like, oh, I'm so calm and happy. You automatically also are a bit heightened. You just feel it inside. So this happens with our children as well. And if we are not doing, as parents, if we are not doing things that are intrinsically motivating, that are internally controlled, that are freely chosen, then it's a lot harder for us to give all day long. So, yes, modeling, because for sure we want them to not be afraid, but I would even go as far to say, as you are modeling lifelong importance of self-regulation, and that's a really important thing.
yeah, I think, yeah, that definitely nailed the head on the nail. I can't talk right now. Blah, 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 blah. Cut that part out. Like that it has to be something that you are
Mhm,
choosing and that feels good to you, and it's something that you enjoy and bring happiness.
mhm,
Talking about the co-regulation,
mhm.
does that have something to do with the concept of like mirror neurons? Is that what you're referring, like that they're picking up on our emotions and mirroring them?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Um, so it's important for us to play to calm our own nervous system so
Yep.
that they're also learning how to regulate their emotions because we have
Mhm.
to regulate our own. Is that, am I understanding? I'm making
Yep.
sure I'm
Yep.
understanding this correctly. Okay.
You are absolutely understanding that correctly. And we mentioned proprioception earlier when we were talking about climbing the tree, how we use our bodies. And when we're using our bodies, we're more aware of what's going on internally, right? The
I'm not
interoception
climbing
and
a
how
tree.
those two. Yeah, you don't have to climb a tree, but you can move. You
I'm
can
way
build.
past
Yeah,
that.
you can need some bread. You can, whatever it is that you find throughout your day, that is something that you are intrinsically motivated to do and internally controlled. And a lot of times it is coming up with something new and that you haven't tried before, or it's something that requires you to be physically active. So I would say for me, and again, play looks different for different people because it is based on those things. For me, exercise, and I got a Peloton not too long ago, and I'm intrinsically motivated to do that. I'm using my body, it's internally controlled. That's fun. It's freely chosen. That's fun. That's play to me. So, does it look like that I'm carrying my whatever, my figurines around and talking to each other or building a tower? No, it looks
Might be a
different
little
as
concerned if you had your
yeah,
Superman in the
if
hall
that's
talking all day long, but
I know. You're like, Sarah's going to be on my podcast today,
yeah,
but she said she was playing doll houses.
yeah,
Like,
might be a little concerning. Yes. But those things can be played, or they could not be, because it could
mhm.
be, I feel like I have to do this. I hate
Yep.
riding on the Peloton, but I'm supposed to work
Yep.
out 3 times a day. 3 times a day. You'd be really in shape. I'm supposed to work out, and I hate it. I hate it. And that's not play then.
Nope, that's not play. So it could be the same activity and it's play for one person and play not for another. But that goes back into let's get curious about it. Like, why? Why is that fun for you and not fun for me? And okay, so maybe we're not going to do it together. Fine. You're going to find something else that you enjoy doing. But it is important to find something.
But just to try too, because I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
I mean, a Peloton's a big investment. But even if it's just go to the gym and ride the bikes versus go on
Right.
the treadmill versus take a Zumba class, like
Go
for
for a walk outside.
my skiing, like just to
Yeah.
try, know, okay, cross that one off the list. That was not
Yep. Yeah. And like my daughter loves like swimming. She loves jumping in the ocean. She loves swimming in a pool, any of that. I hate all of it. I do not like getting my hair wet. I don't like none of that is fun to me. And so that's not play, but it is for her. And so I can enjoy watching her do that. And I could say, no, that's not for me. Just like we were talking about with the roller coasters or with skiing. Like that's not for me. but I do have some things that are for me. And again, if we as adults are modeling that for our children, it's not only modeling that self-advocacy, but it's also modeling the self-awareness, and it's allowing us to be regulated to give to our kids all day long.
Yeah, I think that is so helpful. So helpful for moms to have permission to allow their kids to play and to see the value, benefit, and all the things their kids are getting from that, but then also have the permission to allow themselves to do that export. It really does change the whole entire atmosphere of everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So to close, do you have any final words on this topic or final encouragement for moms as they think about playing for themselves and for their children?
I think my final words of encouragement are try it. It's just a matter of get out there and do it. And even when you're thinking that something is hard, so you're like, I don't have time to allow that because I've got so much other things
that's
going
the number
on.
one objection I hear all the time.
Yep, I don't have time for that. So Leslie Martino wrote this book recently called The Joy of Slow.
Yeah.
Yes, she was just on mine too as well. Yes. And she talked about time being expansive, right? That we want to give time during our day where time can expand because you're getting into this play scheme, or you're getting into trying something new and you're going to practice it day and day and day and day. So I want you to think about, sure, there are a lot of important things that you are on your to-do list, but there are also a lot of things that they're just going to naturally build when we give time to expand.
Yeah, that was a great book too. So how can people find you and find out more if they want to know more about occupational therapy or more about some of the concepts we talked about?
Absolutely. So you can find me on social media at homeschool_OT. You can find me on the podcast, The OT is In. You can find me at TikTok at homeschool_OT, although I just started that account like last week. So you can be one of my first like 8 followers. You can find me at homeschoolot.com, right?
I gave up on that one.
Yes. Oh. And all of these things my goal is to help to support families through consultation or through classes that I have there or through community where we are able to break down some of these tasks because we all want our kids to be successful in what they specifically need and want to do, which oftentimes includes like getting curious and figuring out what is holding them back. So that's so much of what I do.
Yes, awesome. We will link to that and link to the resource that you mentioned. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Let's wrap up with a few key takeaways. Number 1, play is foundational to learning. Play is essential for developing motor, social, and cognitive skills that form the foundation for academic and life skills. Through play, children naturally build executive functioning abilities like problem solving, persistence, and flexibility. Number 2, risky play is valuable. Allowing children to engage in risky play like climbing trees or handling safe tools helps them learn their physical limits, develop confidence, and improve risk assessment. Parents can guide this by knowing their children's abilities and setting safe boundaries. Unstructured versus structured. While structured activities like sports provide valuable skills, unstructured play encourages self-motivation, creativity, and resilience, which are harder to cultivate in adult-directed settings. So make sure in your schedule you allow time for unstructured play. Number 4, emotional and social development happens in play. Play provides a safe environment for children to work on emotional regulation, social interactions like handling conflicts, negotiating roles, and building teamwork skills. Children need time to play with other children. Number 5, what is the role of a parent in play? Parents don't need to constantly participate in their children's play. Observing or selectively joining can help maintain the child's autonomy and focus. It's also beneficial for parents to model playfulness and are willing to try new things. And the last one, play is not just for children. It is also important for parents. For mothers, engaging in play-like activities, whether dancing, exercising, or crafting, can relieve stress, improve self-awareness, and help maintain a balanced approach to parenting. Make sure you check out the show notes for today's episode for the links to Sarah Collins' Homeschool OT website. And thanks for joining us today. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this episode, please heart it down below and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment and let me know what you learned in today's episode. I'd love to hear from you.